Hello, welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. My name is Daniel Cohen. As ever, I'm delighted to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad, Dan. You?
I'm good, thanks. It's another pyjamas and Horlicks night for us tonight.
But it's a kind of disappointing one tonight, wasn't it? I thought if Rangers would have any chance of getting through that tonight, they needed two things. They needed an excellent performance, and they needed a bit of luck. And I think on the night they get neither of them. I think Rangers were okay tonight, nowhere near the sort of levels in terms of looking to damage teams on the break and on the counter. The kind of performance they turned in Fenerbahce, that's what they needed tonight. They were just a little bit off it. And I think Bilbao, are an excellent side. And I think the longer the game went on tonight, they kind of showed that. I think it was just at the end of the day, it was just too much of a stretch. However, if Rangers get the penalty kick for the foul on Dessers, it's a different tie. And that's what I'm talking about. You need an excellent performance with a little bit of luck thrown in. And you need the officials to do their job. And there's literally no way of explaining why that's not a penalty kick. So I can get it from a ref's point of view, because maybe Dessers looks as if he goes down a bit easy. So at full speed, if you're the referee, do you give that penalty? Probably not. Although when you look and see the big hole in the front of his shirt, you might have a second thought. But the guy that's sitting there on VAR, what's he doing? What's he doing?
I mean, look at that picture there. That's mad.
It's impossible not to see that. It's impossible not to give that penalty kick. So, do you know what? Maybe Jose Mourinho had a point.
Well, there's already been a couple of comments sent in on the penalty thing tonight. Stuart says, Ballinganoff killed us. Oh, sorry, this isn't on a page. He says, why was Hadji brought off so quickly at half-time? Ryan, though, Smith says, how on earth can a referee, his assistants in VAR, look at the Dessers incident and not give a penalty? And Ian says, the best team won tonight, but if we get that penalty when we should have had on Dessers, it changes the entire tie. A complete farce. To be honest, I can't really disagree with any of that. I mean,
it's hard. It's hard to argue against it, especially when you think back to the first leg at Ibrox and the penalty that Bilbao were given for the Dujon Sterling handball, which to this day I can't quite fathom how they managed to, between them, decide that was a penalty kick. And I can't fathom how, as I said, I can almost excuse the referee at full speed, because I think Dessers looks as if he throws himself a bit. But when he picks himself up off the turf and he's got a big hole in his shirt, and then VAR get the chance to look at it, it's a penalty kick. There's no two ways about it. Now, that might have been a real tie-changing moment, because if Rangers go 1-0 up at that point, the confidence they'll get from that, and the fact that Bilbao really then need to come at them might leave more spaces for Rangers to get into. But over the course of the two ties, I think anybody looking at it, through a clear set of eyes, would have to concede that Bilbao are a better side. It's simple as that. They deserve to go through over the two legs. Those crazy refereeing decisions aside, and I think both of them are highly dubious. But even take that away from it, and even though these moments do change matches, I think you could see Bilbao are a better side, and they look as if they've got a real chance of going the whole way in this competition. Although don't rule out Big Ange.
I know. Always wins in his second season, mate.
Well, always does, mate.
Robbie Patterson, watching live on Facebook, has hit back at us with the penalty thing. He says, the shirt pull was no penalty. It needs to be excessive to be deemed a penalty.
Watch it. His shirt. Really ripped his shirt off his chest.
Watch
it. It's a jersey pull. It's a free kick. In any other part of the pitch, it's a penalty kick.
He says the pull lasts about a second. If that, the hole in the shirt makes it look worse than it was. Willie Collins stated this as a new directive on shirt pulls. But I'm with you. I think it was a penalty. And
of course it's a penalty kick. And anybody that says it's not a penalty kick is not telling the truth. It's a penalty kick. And VAR really has to call that. If the ref can, and by the way, as I said to you, I'm not sure at full speed if I'm the ref I give it. Until I see Dessers getting up with his shirt nearly ripped off. VAR, it's just that picture we've got there, that freeze frame. there's no other way of looking at it other than that's a penalty kick.
Mark has chimed in just to let us know that 10-man Leon have scored against Man United. They're 3-2 up at Old Trafford, although they're down to 10 men. 5-4 to Leon on aggregate. That'd be pretty mad if they went out at that time, Man United. But anyway.
Well, see, the thing is, from a Rangers perspective as well there, Daniel, if it was Leon, then you'd really, I wouldn't have fancied Rangers to get through that one anyway.
But if it was Man U, I would. If it was Man U, I would really have fancied Rangers.
I think they'd be sitting there thinking, oh my God, what an opportunity. But Leon, yeah, I think over the course of a couple of legs against Leon, it would have been a hard shift for Rangers to try and get through that anyway.
I mean, elsewhere in the game tonight, we talked a lot in the build-up about Barry Ferguson's team selection. Overall, did you think he got that right?
Well, he picked the team that I suggested, so of course I think he got it right.
You do, of course,
basically, I told him what to do. See that note that he handed on to Tavernier? I'd already said that.
He said, Jacko's text me to say...
No, listen, I think including Hadji was the right thing. And this is where I've got a bit of sympathy with Barry Ferguson. These were difficult decisions that had to get made in the heat of the moment. And you can look back with, 2020 vision on them and say, well, was that the right decision? Taking Hadji off at half time, as one of the comments said there. Yeah, I'm not sure that was the right thing to do either.
Was Hadji, sorry to jump in, Keith, was Hadji injured? No?
I don't think so. I think it was just I think it had to, it wasn't quite working. I was thinking at half time, and a really difficult thing to do would have been to take Connor Barron off, having put him on as a first half substitute. But I thought that he might think about that at half time, putting Diomande back in a more central position. I don't think, I think Diomande and Raskin started the game really well. And I thought the two of them in the centre midfield, I thought that's where Rangers were going to get their joy. If they had a chance in the tie, Diomande and Raskin were going to be key. Shifting Diomande out to a kind of wide left position, he wasn't able to influence the game from that position. So I was wondering at halftime, and I wonder if that was a conversation that was had in the dressing room, was do you take Connor Barron back off again? And do you switch to a 4 and, keep Hadji on and put Egerman on and just go 4-4-2 for the whole second half? But look, the circumstances, the cards that were dealt there were awful, wasn't it? Really, when you look at it, they start the second half. I mean, they almost got enough. I think if they got to half time at 0-0, it would have been a lot easier in terms of, right, what's the team talk? How are we looking? Need to fire them up a little bit, because I did think towards the end of that first half, you felt a goal was coming. But even then, when the goal does come, and it is a penalty kick, but it's a horrible penalty kick, isn't it? Because Big Suter, who was outstanding, absolutely outstanding again, but he's just got the wrong side. I don't think he's even aware the Bilbao player is, was it Sinista?
Yeah,
was on his shoulder.
Aye.
I don't think he knows he's there. But, it was really clever play from him to put his leg in there to make sure that he got the foul, and it was a foul. Was it deliberate? No. Did Suter know he was doing it? No. It was really clever striker play, and it won them a penalty, and Rangers couldn't complain about the penalty because, it was just the right decision. However, what a horrible way to concede so close to half time. And if you get in 0-0 at half time, again, it's a different tie. So again, the breaks, the luck that you need in order to get through a match like that, abandon Rangers, and I'd probably abandon them over the two ties.
And mistakenly as well, I put up the comment from Stuart, but Balogun going off as well, right after half-time.
Well, there's another how's your luck moment.
Probably, I don't know if you'd agree, but I would say still Rangers' best defender. But to concede right on half-time and right after half-time, he comes off. It just, tilts the whole tie.
I think Suter and Balogun are real, a couple of colossus in that Rangers defence. And Balogun was having an excellent night, doing all the things you're looking for Leon Balogun to do. You saw as well his frustration when he got told by the medics that he had to come off. He didn't want to come off. And that's another one you wonder, have the medics kind of rushed that a little bit? But if there's any doubts about concussion, then they're not doing their job right if they allow him to go back on. But Balogun didn't seem convinced that he had to go off at that point. And he is a big warrior, isn't he, of a guy. But in situations like that, if there's any doubts, if you think there's a concussion issue, you have to make that change. As frustrating as that would have been for Balogun. I thought, by the way, what I would say is Big Enciala, who I thought it looked as if he was going to come on when Yilmaz pulled up with his hamstring. And I can understand why there might have been a kind of worry about putting him on, given he's young, he's raw, he's not experienced. That's a massive game for him. To the boys' credit, when he came on the pitch in the second half as the replacement for Balogun, I thought he was really hardly put a foot wrong. I thought he was terrific. Or did he come on at half time actually?
He came on
at half time. Yeah. No. Igaman came on for Balogun. They changed their 4-4-2 at that point.
You're right. Sorry, you're right.
So Enciala had the full 45 minutes, and I thought it was a pretty much faultless performance from him. I thought he looked pretty impressive actually.
Right. No, I completely agree. We've got a lot of comments coming in, and if you want to get involved, please do. Sorry, I was looking away there because it's 4-2 to Leon now at Old Trafford. 4-2 to Tearman Leon. So it looks like they're going.
I'm not sure Amarin's going to see this season out.
I'll tell you what, I bet he's wondering why he left Lisbon. Right, this one, John, he says the pen was actually a foul and Suter swapped the strips around, and it's a proper challenge from the first game. A couple of people saying this as well. Dennis Mirren, who I know is a Rangers fan, saying the only good thing about tonight means tactically clueless Barry not getting the Rangers job full time. Do you think, Keith, I know we've talked about it ad nauseum, but how big an impact on Barry Ferguson's chances of getting the job full time does going out to Bilbao have?
I don't think it changes it that much. What I would say is that if he'd won it, that would have changed it. I think that if he'd got through at the semi-final, then there would have been actually a bit of pressure on the Americans who looked set to take the club over. I think there'd been a fair bit of pressure on them, and that might have fed into the decision-making process about the manager for next season. But do you know what? This one's completely in the air. And the reason that I say that is nobody's getting any access. It's really difficult to get any information at all on the American thought process on this. There's either two things. I think I've said this previously. Either Andrew Kavanagh, and I am told that he's in nature, or by his nature, a really cautious, conservative, small C sort of guy. That's where he made his money in health insurance, so that would figure. So because of that, is he simply concentrating as a health insurance guy might on just getting over that first hurdle, getting the first objective done, which is closing the deal, and then you look to what happens next season? Or have they got a plan already in place and they're ready to press the button on it as soon as the ink is dried on the contract? What I would say is, if it's the first one and what they're doing is concentrating on getting their business deal done, actually the longer that goes on, perhaps the more chance there is that they have to turn around to Barry Ferguson at the end of the day and say, look, we're right out of time here. Here's a 12-month rolling contract. But if it's the other, and they've got a guy in mind that they want to bring in, and they've got plans set in place, ready to go, then nothing really changes tonight. because they've not sat down with Barry Ferguson to have that conversation. So it's one or the other, and actually it's a coin toss, Daniel, in terms of there's no way of knowing at this moment in time what they have in mind, if they have anything in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, well, that one will play out. But in terms of, I think Barry Ferguson probably had it in his own mind that some of the domestic results, the Hibs one in particular at Ibrox, kind of kiboshed his hopes or his chances. And he probably then, if that is the case, probably needed something extraordinary to happen in Europe. And clearly that didn't happen tonight.
I've got to say, he's taken a lot of stick in the comment section with Marzuno. Ferguson is well on his way to being Rangers' worst ever manager statistically. A lot of people, Tony here, saying the Bilbao strikers had their shooting boots on. It could have been a cricket score. The two things I'd say to that is that I actually thought Rangers were pretty admirable tonight. They were up against a team who've got the best defence in Europe's top 5 leagues, a team that have only lost at home at Atletico Madrid. They've lost fewer games than Barca and Real this season. You're talking about a genuinely elite team.
Oh, they're a top side. And I think, as I said, they didn't impress me that much at Ibrox. I don't think they had a great night at Ibrox. I thought they looked much more like the team that I expected to see tonight.
And Nico Williams too.
Nico Williams was just different class. Nice. Tavernier switches off for his goal. He accepted that in the aftermatch interview, pitch side.
Do you know the only thing about that, look? I actually thought Tavernier played really well up to that.
Over 2 legs. And I know that he started tonight in the kind of right of the 3, so he wasn't directly up against Nico Williams. But when he was right back in a 4, he did fine against him tonight. He did excellent against him in the first game. So over 2 legs, 290 minutes, he's made one mistake, but it's a really costly one. And you can't give guys like Nico Williams that you can't switch off. And he did switch off, and they paid the ultimate price for it. But I thought Tavernier did himself no harm at all over the 2 games. He gets a lot of stick. He comes in for a lot of stick. I've just blamed him there for that. Second goal tonight, and he's blamed himself for it. But yeah, that's what happens. One kind of half a second kind of lapse of concentration, and that's what happens.
I mean, Alistair here says Tavernier's a loser. He should have been chased years ago. I just think, look, see, I said this before, I think, after the Fenerbahce game. See, when you look back to the game against Celtic in September, and he's literally been hounded out of Ibrox, screamed at by his own fans, insulted. To come back and play the way he's played this season, okay, he's not maybe had the goals that he's had previously, but I think he deserves an awful lot of credit. So many people would have just folded me.
I'm just not sure he was ever captain material. Do you know what I mean by that?
I know what you mean.
I think circumstances led to him taking that armband on. If I'm not very much mistaken, it was when Kenny Miller and Lee Wallace were both internally suspended by the club.
I think you're right.
I'm not sure that Tavernier even sees himself, and not now, but back then, I'm not sure he would have seen himself as an automatic choice to become a captain. I think it kind of happened by accident through circumstance. And I feel a bit sorry for him, because I think as the captain, you've got to front up so much. You're the guy that's in the firing line. You're the guy that's... And I think, if you just take James Tavernier as what he is, which is a really good right back, his contribution, what was that? That was his 100th European tie.
Yep.
For Rangers tonight. I mean, that's incredible numbers. And his stats, whatever people think about James Tavernier, whether I think he's actually a natural leader or not is not really the issue. If you're going to assess his contribution over the years, it's been terrific. He's now due his testimonial, and he's been a massive, massive contributor for Rangers. And I think that's where I find it difficult that Rangers fans will look at him as a captain who hasn't won anywhere near enough in terms of silverware as a Rangers captain should, given that he's been there 10 years. But there's a whole bunch of circumstances that need to factor into that, not least the fact that Rangers have run themselves as a football club really badly. There's been a lot of amateurish decisions made, the way the thing's been run. He's had to front that up, and I think that, as I said, it bleeds into this narrative about James Tavernier. Do I think that he's a natural captain? I'm still not convinced by that. But do I think he's played more than his part? Then yeah, of course he has.
I think he's one of the most harshly treated players, certainly for Rangers or Celtic I can remember. Just think for everything he's contributed, the stick he gets is just mad. That's my personal opinion. But by the way, it's Man United 4, Leon 4 in the 120th
wow,
minute.
I can't believe I'm missing this. Can we just end this and just go watch it?
Gianni's saying I've got my fire stick on the background. I can assure you I don't, but people in the comments are letting me know, so much appreciated. A couple more comments before we do go, Keith, right? Let me just fire through these because lots of good comments coming in. And if you're watching at home, you want to get involved, please do. Bomber Brown says, and I don't know if it's the real Bomber Brown. If it is, how you doing, John? People criticising Fergie are just clueless about the game.
That sounds like it might be the real Bomber Brown.
It might be, and I actually think it was our old pal Gianni who was saying that Steven Gerrard is 2-1 on now to be the next Rangers manager. Basically, you know, I love putting you and Scott McDermott on the spot. Who will be Rangers manager on the opening day of next season, Keith?
Not got a clue.
Okay,
Not
cheers.
got a clue.
Thanks for watching.
I hope that I will find out soon and be able to write a nice exclusive about it. But at this minute in time, honestly, I don't know. And the reason that I say that with complete sincerity is that it's impossible to know what the Americans are thinking. They're proving to be a tough nut to crack in terms of getting a line of communication in. But the whole thing depends entirely on what their plan is and if they've got a plan. As I said to you, if they don't have a plan, if they're entirely focused on getting this deal over the line, and then once they've done that, then they turn around. And there's a logic to that as well. I'm not, obviously, as I said to you, Andrew Kavanagh by nature appears to be a cautious sort of operator. If you're a cautious operator, I'm not sure that you've gone out and had back channeling with managers that might be in jobs or staff, potential coaching staff. I'm not sure that you do that. You might do that if you're more of a risk taker, and you just say, well, I'm going to get this done, so let's go and do this in the meantime. From everything I hear about his personality, it wouldn't surprise me if he's focused purely on getting the deal done, getting the contract signed, and getting the keys to the front door. And at that point, he then looks and says, right, what have we got here? What we're looking like for next season? At that point, he might, and I've said this for a while now, this thing is dragging on a little bit. And I think what was time urgent has now become time critical in terms of planning for next season. And that might play into Barry Ferguson's hand. And by the way, I have to tell you, James Tavernier, you heard his quotes at the end there on the kind of trackside interview after the final whistle. And I think he spoke, to me, it was glowing terms about the job that Barry Ferguson is doing with his backroom team. I think the players respect him. I think the players enjoy working with this group. I think they've completely transformed the atmosphere around the training ground from the one that Philip Clement had created. So who knows? I'd be totally lying if I said that I had the first idea about who's going to be the Rangers manager next season. All you can say at this point is that Barry Ferguson's got to have a chance because he's the man in possession right now.
And as well, Keith, because look, if anyone, even the most ardent Rangers fan, had said after getting beat by Queen's Park on February the 9th that Ferguson would come in, he'd win at Celtic Park, he'd put Mourinho and Fenerbahce out of Europe, went into today's game on the brink of a European semi-final, they'd have been lying. There's no way. And people were thinking he was going to get embarrassed, it was going to be cricket scores at Celtic Park and stuff. I think for a guy thrown in like that, I think he's done more than a good job. Personally.
It's not just thrown in, is it? It's thrown in and given that squad, which has been built by guys like Michael Beale and Philip Clement, and they're so far removed from what a proper Rangers squad should look like. And Barry Ferguson and his little group of coaching staff have had to go in and take a really bad hand to the poker table. And I think they've done just about as well as anybody could reasonably have expected of them. Probably a great deal better. But is that enough to earn them a crack at it? I've said it. I've put my own cards on the table, and I've said that I think they should. I think they're trying to move Rangers in the right direction towards something which is far more recognisable to the Rangers that they knew and understood as players. And I think that's what Rangers are desperately in need of. Not another project or a sort of flight of fancy. I genuinely believe that what they're trying to do is the right thing. They've just inherited a squad that makes it really difficult for them. Now, if they were given the chance over the summer to make their own signings, to make the changes that because obviously they didn't have a transfer window, so they've been up close and personal with this squad. They'll have worked out where the flaws lie, of which there are many, and they'll have a fair idea about, perhaps what Walter Smith might have done previously in order to fix that. And you really can't have a better mentor when it comes down to, understanding what's required at that particular club. So I think it would be a mistake if Rangers go in another direction. I think they might end up drifting aimlessly again, further and further away from where Barry Ferguson and his team are trying to drag them back to. But I do suspect that he probably needed something outrageous to happen, and it's not going to happen. The season's now going to peter out. He'll have another, obviously, crack at Celtic. But if the Americans were waiting to see if he could do something spectacular, then that ship sailed now. So it'll be fascinating to see. But as I said, and I'll come back to it, if they've got a plan, then nothing changes. They'll stick to the plan. If they've not quite got a plan yet and the full focus is in completing the takeover, then I think Barry Ferguson's in there still with a decent shout.
Aye. It will be interesting, and we'll be there every step of the way. Keith, Harry Maguire scored in the 122nd minute. Man United 5-4 against Leon.
Wow.
I know. And it's actually still going on. 8 minutes of added time. And Bodo Glimt and Lazio are in penalties.
Wow. That one's the one that will make it really sore for Barry Ferguson. I think if Barry Ferguson gets on the plane back, I think it's tonight, they're coming back, and he finds out that Leon have got through, then I think he'll probably shrug his shoulders and say, well, that would have been a big ask. Mm-hmm. But I think if he finds out it's Man United to get through, he'll be thinking to himself, oh my God, what an opportunity that might have been. And
that is them through full time.
Wow.
So, mad. Look, I think that brings us to the end of tonight's Hotline Live with Record Sport. We were expecting Scott McDermott, Keith. He missed his flight to Bilbao.
He's missed Hotline Live.
He's missed Hotline Live. I think we need to be having serious words with HR, to be honest. But
his failure to produce a passport has meant he's not been allowed to get on the internet tonight.
On that note, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for all the comments. We massively
listen, before you go, Dan.
Go on.
What's your plan for Sunday?
Great minds think alike. So it's obviously the Celtic game on Sunday against St Johnstone, the Scottish Cup semi-final, kicks off at 3. So I'd imagine our standard time is 6 o'clock. Probably makes most sense.
6 p.m. Sunday. You've
6
got a
p.m.
date.
Sunday. That's it. We hope very much you can join us then. Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, Dan. Night,
Thanks
guys.
Cheers.